Hi, I'm Scott Veritas, and today I'm launching a new podcast called RedPill Nation. Today's inaugural episode, meant to be an introduction, will not feature a guest as future episodes are intended to, and it will also be shorter than future installments. RedPill Nation is intended primarily to host and inspire open, honest, and courageous conversation about the culture war currently raging in the United States and throughout the Western world. I intend to build a nonpartisan community of individuals who are concerned for our society's future and who wish to fight to preserve those values which built Western society into the greatest place the world has ever known. These values include free speech, individualism, due process, nonviolence, and perhaps most importantly, the dedicated and forthright pursuit of truth as the primary motivation of all of our core institutions. My vision for this show is to set an example in truth-seeking and to be a part of the process of restoring our institutions or replacing them entirely on the basis of those values like truth-seeking which once made them great. In recent years, most, if not all, of our core institutions, namely academia, government, entertainment and news media, and most recently big tech, have all become completely untethered, if not diametrically opposed, to any notion of truth as a central goal. The sum total of the cultural influence of these massive, powerful entities is indescribable and seemingly impossible to counterbalance with dissenting views. Their unchallenged influence over our culture threatens to create a state wherein there is only one acceptable mode of thinking, and all dissent is crushed before it can plant even the smallest seed of resistance in the minds of the public, leaving our citizenry in a state of virtual mind control, as any speech or expression of heterodox ideas is censored by agents of the orthodoxy. These agents include the academics who tell us what is and isn't to be studied, what questions we can ask, and even what scientific experiments we can run in the academy. The media that tells us what's true and false, what's important and to be discussed, and what's not and ought to be ignored. Tech companies like Google that decide what entertainment, information, and ideas we're exposed to on an almost daily basis in an increasingly online world. And perhaps most disturbingly, the government that tells us what we can and cannot do as citizens. At this time, all of these institutions are deeply corrupted by an illiberal authoritarian orthodoxy, and we are seeing the resulting destruction of our society accelerate at an alarming pace. Much like infected vital organs threaten to shut down a human body, corrupted vital institutions threaten to destroy a nation. I believe that America and the rest of the Western world is worth saving. Because in the past, when our institutions let values of truth-seeking and individualism inspire their actions, it led to the most remarkable advancements in technology, art, and civics that we as a species could possibly imagine. The total benefits of these achievements towards humanity are unquantifiably great, and we should be extremely grateful for them every day of our lives. Not only should we be extremely grateful for these values and the advancements they bring, but we should also be extremely protective of them, as they inevitably come under attack by bad faith actors and those with good faith who have been misled into attacking our bedrock principles and the vital institutions they once inspired. These increasingly vicious attacks on our institutions are claimed to all be in the name of something called social justice. That is the name given by its own inventors to the entity which has infected our core institutions. Of course, that nice-sounding name is an advertising stunt. Much like the Great Leap Forward in Maoist China implied progress, social justice was intentionally given a name which implies justice, when in reality, it has led to more injustice and cultural regression than virtually any other entity in modern society. It has caused destruction and violence, sometimes lethal, to erupt in our streets as police are ordered by government leaders to stand down and let mayhem overtake our cities unchallenged, without any consequence for the criminals who partake, all in the name of social justice. It has led our news media to knowingly and intentionally lie to our faces every day for years on end about the results of a landmark presidential election through conspiracy theories and innuendo. More recently, social justice has inspired our media to engage in a coordinated gaslighting campaign against the American public about the motivations behind the Black Lives Matter movement, which we all saw with our own eyes led directly to the aforementioned violence and destruction that's ravaging our communities and intimidating our elected leaders into abandoning us to the mob. And of course, much like social justice itself, Black Lives Matter has a nice-sounding, easily marketable name, which is actually intended to automatically make dissenters look racist, no matter how measured, well-informed, or data and facts-driven their dissent may be. Because if you object to violence and destruction in your community caused by Black Lives Matter protests, or to indoctrination in your schools and workplaces through Black Lives Matter curriculums and trainings, then it means you simply must not think that Black lives matter. That is the deeply cynical strategy on which both Black Lives Matter and social justice depend. Long before the Black Lives Matter riots, social justice inspired a moral panic around so-called rape culture, causing witch hunts which often result in innocent men suffering university expulsion, complete social isolation, and being blacklisted from any kind of employment due to the fact that accused of rape is the first thing that comes up during a routine background check for them. All over false accusations of sexual assault. Social justice leaves these men's lives totally and irreversibly destroyed for no reason, with its influence causing our institutions to assume their guilt, sometimes despite overwhelming evidence of their innocence, denying them due process in the name of feminism, and of course, feminism's parent company, social justice. Social justice has led our academic institutions, which claim to be dedicated to diversity and inclusion, to not only fire any professors who state a position or belief which isn't perfectly aligned with social justice orthodoxy, but to also blacklist them so that they can never hope to get another position in academia as long as they live. It has led to individuals being told that their opinions are less valuable or valid on the basis of their sex or skin color. What they call social justice has even led to people being given college admissions and jobs on the basis of their sex or race, including powerful positions in government agencies and Fortune 500 companies. This means that other more qualified applicants are being denied these positions simply for being white, being male, or both. Does this sound like a system which is truly aimed towards seeking justice, as it seems to claim? Does it sound like a system which seeks to uphold the vital liberal principles on which functional and productive institutions are built, such as equality of opportunity and diversity of thought? Or does it really seek enforced equality of outcomes and mandated diversity of skin color? Something tells me social justice isn't the best name for this entity which seems to be hellbent on destroying our society and to be seeking anything but justice. The endless injustice caused by social justice, much of which targets groups labeled as oppressors, has led our society to a state in which discrimination, bigotry, and even violence is considered justified and is at times encouraged when it is targeted towards whites and males, and of course, most of all, white males, which social justice claims are the root of all evil by nature of their sex and skin color. Isn't there a name for that? A name for judging people and hurting them on the basis of their sex and skin color? There is. It's called bigotry, more specifically, sexism and racism. The very thing we've spent centuries rightfully seeking to extinguish from our society. And isn't there a name for a system which actively seeks to oppress, marginalize, and make second-class citizens of groups based on their sex and race? There is. Such a system is called supremacy. Now, there's a word that comes right from the social justice acolytes' own playbook. White male supremacy, they say, as they seek to convince us that the freest and most equal society that has ever existed for women and minorities is actually hellbent on upholding white male dominance, despite almost all facts and data about our society and its institutions showing that we are an incredibly, although not perfectly, equal society for women and minorities. Well, I think on this show, I'll flip the script and use a term that comes right out of the social justice acolytes' own narrative. They dubiously claim that society is under threat by circumambient, malignant white supremacy, which lives in the hearts of all white men who seek to somehow reverse our course as a nation back into the days of slavery, patriarchy, imperialism, and all the other terrible things that white Americans totally invented all by themselves, none of which existed in virtually every culture that came before. No. We invented all of those bad things, and that makes Western culture bad because it is built on white supremacy. Funny. I must have missed that part of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and the Magna Carta where it said anything about white supremacy. I think I got distracted by all of the mentions of liberty, justice, and equality, which have actually been the basis of our laws for centuries. Of course, flawed men did not uphold or administer these principles as they should have through our systems in the past, and I do not deny that. But the story of America is not simply that we were founded with inequality at the soul of our society. It is that we used those principles of equality, justice, and liberty that our founding fathers intentionally wrote into our collective soul as a nation, our Constitution, to correct our systems over time so that they better serve everyone in our society equally. And in 2020, we are all equal under the law, and we have been for over 50 years. And yet we are still told by social justice acolytes that we are a white supremacist nation built on racism and bigotry. This obsession with the myth of present-day white supremacy in the United States is the core of a false narrative that social justice acolytes are currently pushing onto the American public with a massive, coordinated propaganda operation. So let's give social justice a new name, a better name, that puts those brave souls who resist it on equal linguistic grounds with social justice acolytes screaming about white supremacy. Because surely if the public sees the culture war as a battle between social justice and white supremacy, then social justice will win in a rout. I mean, who wouldn't choose social justice if those were their options? I know I would. But that's not what America is choosing between. And we in the resistance need to make that clear. We need to stop calling it social justice and start calling it what it is: woke supremacy. This is not a battle between racism and anti-racism, feminism and patriarchy, or social justice and white supremacy. It is a battle for the soul of our society between authoritarianism in the form of woke supremacy and the core Western liberal values such as free speech and due process that woke supremacists clearly hate, and which also happen to be the foundational pillars of our great nation. Social justice has been given many alternative names over the years: postmodernism, critical theory, intersectionality, and wokeness, just to name a few. The name woke supremacy is much more fitting than the all too innocent and righteous sounding social justice and other names which fail to effectively denote the bigoted and downright evil intentions of this ideology. If we don't start informing the American public of what they're really signing on to when they support social justice, then we can have no hope that we will ever defeat this threat to our republic. So spread the word. It's not social justice, intersectionality, feminism, or anti-racism. It's woke supremacy, an organized effort to undermine and eventually replace our current society with its own authoritarian, supremacist vision of a world in which the reins of oppression have been flipped and evil white men are finally punished for their innate, inherited, collective sins. Despite its original name, social justice is anything but an innocent and righteous pursuit of justice of any kind. It is a pursuit of supremacy, disguised in language which can be used to easily market it to an unassuming public and to smear its opponents as bigots. Anti-racism means nothing of the sort when uttered by a woke supremacist. Instead, it actually means racism, but just targeted at those who deserve it, meaning white people. Feminism means nothing of the sort when uttered by a woke supremacist. Instead, it means sexism, but targeted at those who deserve it, meaning men. Discrimination, oppression, and bigotry, which is enforced by the state, is not justice. It is supremacy by definition. And make no mistake, the end goal of so-called social justice activism is to have such things enforced by the state. For evidence, look no further than the recent revision to the state constitution that was passed by Democrats in California, America's most populous state. They passed a revision removing a line from the state constitution which read, and I quote, "The state shall not discriminate against or grant preferential treatment to any individual or group on the basis of race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin." If that doesn't show what the true intentions of so-called social justice are, then I don't know what does. So I will now stop calling it social justice and call it what it is. We should all now call it woke supremacy, as I will on this show. And you too should call it that if you ever want to expose this ideology to the public for what it truly is and bring an end to its nearing destruction of our civil society. If we are to prevent this destruction, we need a group of people, rebels, a resistance, who are willing to stand up to and even completely replace, if necessary, our corrupted institutions by telling the truth, no matter how uncomfortable those truths are and what consequences may come the way of those who tell them. The red pill, as a symbol, is meant to signify uncomfortable truths, which require courage to confront, while the blue pill represents comforting lies which lull us into a state of ignorance and complacency. Far too many people are under the influence of the blue pill right now. And if that doesn't change, all of Western society will fall to woke supremacy and its acolytes. My vision for this show is to create a community of individuals unafraid to tell the uncomfortable truths that go against woke orthodoxy. A RedPill Nation. A tribe of the tribeless, with no direct ties to any political party. A band of brothers and sisters whose only shared goal is to save our republic from woke supremacy and create spaces where free speech, open inquiry, and the courageous exploration of ideas can take place, leading to more advancements for all of humanity, as well-explored, openly discussed, and vigorously debated ideas turn into concrete, collective action based off of the consensus we build through open dialogue. That vision is antithetical to the authoritarian censorship of woke supremacy and its intentional corruption of our sense-making systems and vital institutions. And so this podcast, RedPill Nation, is born in direct opposition to woke supremacy, which will be a recurring theme on the show. Thank you for listening, and welcome to RedPill Nation.